Welcome to another episode of Missing Pieces. This is my weekly audio journal where I talk about my life, things I got going on, and the things I've been thinking about, as scary as that is. I'm recording this on Friday morning once again. This is Friday, November 4th. 10:37 a.m. and it's hard to believe that it's November, especially looking outside right now because it has been beautiful. In fact, I think it's going to get up to 70 degrees today, which is awesome for November, and I'll take it because I know, just like in Game of Thrones, winter is coming here to Pennsylvania, so we'll soak this in as much as we can. This episode, though, I'm going to pick up last Friday where we left off. I've been recording these a little bit earlier in the week to free up my weekends a little bit, and last weekend I definitely needed that because we did a lot. Starting with Friday, I did something that I've never done before. I went to Planet Fitness in the afternoon. That's the gym that I go to. It's a lovely place. $10 a month gets you access to go anytime that you want, and you can work out there and use all their equipment for that low price. They should probably sponsor this episode because I talk about it a lot, but it's a great value. And I was saying to Cody the other day, like, I think of all the things that I've invested a monthly subscription fee into, I feel like I've gotten the most value out of Planet Fitness. So I went on an afternoon and it was lovely going there at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like nobody there. I loved it. There were a couple campers as usual, but I went in there and I did all my stuff. And that day in particular, I felt like I had like one of my best workouts that I've ever had. I increased my weights on everything just to see if I could do it. And I did. And it's been awesome seeing that and feeling the burn, I guess. So I did that, had a great workout. And then promptly after expending all those calories there and really going for those gains, I went for another type of gain, and that gain came from Five Guys. We got dinner there, burger and fries, way more calories in that food than I could have probably ever expended at the gym. But sometimes you got to treat yourself, and that was my little cheat, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, as did the rest of the family as well. If you guys haven't had Five Guys before, it's pretty expensive, kind of fast food, but the burgers are phenomenal. You can get them with like any toppings that you want. The fries are amazing. Cody and Clark got a strawberry milkshake. Their milkshakes are godlike. So it's an absolute win. It just takes a little bit of time for them to make it, unlike McDonald's where you can just roll up to the drive-thru, and it's way more expensive, but it's way better too. I would say that the food tastiness level outweighs the cost level, at least in my opinion, but you may disagree if you've ever gone there and your wallet might cry a little bit, but it was great. Even better than that, after that, we dumped off Clarkman at Yummy and Paps. No, I'm just kidding. We did drop him off there, but it was because Cody and I were going to see a show at our local community arts center called Whose Live Is It Anyways? And you guys might know the show Whose Line Is It? Starring Drew Carey and his cast of guys, where they do kind of impromptu audience suggested material where they do like a comedy show. That's exactly what this was. They go up there with kind of like a baseline plan, but they rely on the audience to give them suggestions on things that they can make songs about or make jokes about and just talk about in general. They have a lot of volunteers come up. There's like sound effects, people that move them, whole bunch of stuff, and it was so much fun. I was cracking up so hard, and my face physically hurt from smiling during the show. I loved it. Drew Carey wasn't there, by the way. He's got apparently a lot bigger things going on, including being the host of The Price is Right. And Wayne Brady wasn't there either. Wayne Brady's probably my favorite guy, and he's got a gig too. So this was Colin, who's like Styles. Ryan Stiles, that's the guy. Colin's the little bald guy. He wasn't there either. It was Ryan Stiles, who apparently has quite the super fan following. They had somebody come up on stage that was wearing a Ryan Stiles t-shirt, which was pretty funny. But it was just so hilarious. And the guys that he brought on with him were really funny too. And I had like some of those moments where it was just like uncontrollable laughter, like those moments that you like really just want to like feel as much as you can. I don't know if you've ever like watched something that just really had you busting up, like it really hit that place in your comedic zone of laughter, but that's what happened to me there, and it was so good. The only thing that I will say is I was a little embarrassed because these guys go all over the place, including like big cities, and I feel like they really thought we were some backwoods hillbillies, and some of the suggestions that people threw out there kind of made that become like kind of true, including the one thing is they asked, what's one thing that you can only find in Pennsylvania? And someone yells, tractor. And I'm just like, oh. And then they asked for another thing, and then someone yelled your mom, and it was funny. It was a good time. It was very interactive, and we had a great time going there. It was nice that that was like in our town because there's not much going on here. So that was a nice, I guess almost like a little date that we got to go on and enjoyed it thoroughly. We left Clarkman at Yammy's that night to spend the night, which is like his favorite thing to do because he's treated like an absolute king over there. Anything that he wants to do, anything that he wants to eat, whatever it is, she's like his servant essentially. So he likes Yammy, who's his grandmother, way better than us because he's just treated like absolute royalty at that household. So we left him there overnight, and the next morning we got up and we went hiking. We went hiking at Ricketts Glen. It's one of my favorite places to hike here in Pennsylvania. Not that I've been to every hiking place. It's just it's a great hike because it's a loop that goes around all these different waterfalls. So if you love seeing various waterfalls out in the woods, which are not easy to come across, this has it because it's up on a mountain. And it was a beautiful day. Like I said, like the weather has just been treating us really well here. And the only downside of that day was half of the trail was closed off because of falling rocks. They obviously don't want you dying out there, ideally. So what typically would be a loop of people walking around either this way, like say counterclockwise if you're listening to this, or clockwise, it ended up being a thing where you would walk down to like the bottom portion of it and then walk back up. So it created a lot more traffic on the trail, and you're passing a lot of people, you're getting behind people are in front of you, and you want to be as kind as you can. Like if you feel like people are wanting to walk faster, you kind of get out of their way. If you let people through. So there was a lot more of that than usual. Typically when we go out there, it's not like a Saturday, especially in the fall. There are a lot of people out there, I think, just for the photo ops too, because it was beautiful. But we would go on like in a summer day, like during the week, and there's hardly anybody out there, and you just have the whole place to yourself. But it was nice seeing it during the fall. The falls were wonderful. It did make it a little slippy with the wetness and the leaves coming off the trees, but we didn't have any problems, and it was just a really nice like Saturday morning walk, and that kind of went into the afternoon too. So I loved it. That was kind of the highlight of Saturday. I think we had dinner at Cody's parents that night, and her mom made these amazing things. They're called burger bundles. It's almost like hamburger meat wrapped around stuffing with like a cream of gravy type thing on it. It was just so glorious. Cream of mushroom and made like a gravy. I don't know. I don't know how to make them, but they are delicious, and it was a really nice conclusion to my Saturday of just awesomeness. Like that was just an ultimate lead up to a really great weekend. But then Sunday we went on a video spree with Monday looming, which was Halloween. We had a lot of videos that we needed to make. These things probably should have been done sooner than this, but we had some Lego videos to make. So Clark and I finished the haunted house, which is amazing. You saw a little bit of that if you watched the Greg's World vlogs. You saw us working on that as a family. We put the last pieces on it on Sunday. So we demonstrated that, and then we built our little Halloween build, which was this cat and mouse Lego set that Clark and I split. We did a live stream on that, and that was fun. But after that, we ended up going and unboxing that Marvel box that you may have seen on Greg's World vlog as well. And that was incredible. The stuff inside there was insane, the things that they gave us. And there was no like contract with this. They weren't paying us to do this. It was just like a nice gesture that they sent. And inside of it was all this like Halloween type gear that you could use for a really epic Halloween costume, depending on whatever Marvel character you want to be. For example, they gave us this Black Panther helmet that lights up and does this cool stuff. Black Panther claws. They gave us the Spider-Man web slinging stuff that shoots like the silly string out of it, so you can pretend that you're Spider-Man. They gave us an Iron Man sword type thing that shot Nerf darts. They gave us a Doctor Doom action figure. Just so much stuff. It was crazy to see them hook us up that hard, and I can just imagine what all of that stuff's worth. That being said, the web slinger, we already have one of those, and we have a lot of Nerf stuff as it is. So what we decided to do, and hopefully Marvel doesn't have an issue with this, or Hasbro, who sent us the stuff in particular, we're going to donate those things to Toys for Tots. They're still sealed. We didn't open them up or anything like that. And the web slinging thing, Clark could have two of those and go out shooting around and stuff. But I think some kid would probably really enjoy that a lot more than him having a second one. And the other thing, like Clark has so many Nerf things, it's not even funny. And he doesn't need another Nerf thing for his closet. So we're going to take those two things and I guess re-gift them. I don't know if that's a classless move or not, but it feels like the right thing to do. And maybe some kid at Christmas time will be stoked to be able to pretend that they're Spider-Man or Iron Man. At least that's my hope. So we're gonna give those. The Black Panther helmet though is really sick. And we've already opened it, and there was a Thor hammer in there too, so that stuff's going to go on display. But I did find out that the Black Panther helmet I can actually wear. Like, it kind of expands out, so you can put it on, and it's pretty darn neat. So next year, if Clark isn't going to be Black Panther for Halloween, I think I might try my hand at being Black Panther, and we'll see how I can navigate the dark streets during Halloween trick-or-treat time wearing that. Speaking of that, that's where our story's going next. Man, this is an efficient podcast, I'll tell you that. Monday was Halloween, trick-or-treat day, if you will, and it's something that I look forward to every year, along as with Clark Man, because you get to dress up and you get to go throughout the city, and you get to, or town, I guess. We don't live in a city. You get to go out throughout the town and go to people's houses, and they give you candy. What's better than that? And this one was a little bittersweet for me, because as Clark Man was dressing up as Captain America and we're getting ready, I was just thinking, like, man, how many more years are we going to get a chance to do this? It kind of got me sad a little bit, because like this isn't going to happen forever. And we've had so many awesome Halloweens, and I feel like I only have a few left before, like, he doesn't do it anymore. I was thinking, I don't know, what, like 12 maybe, 12 or 13, you're probably not going trick-or-treating anymore, especially with your dad and your mom. You're probably doing it with friends. So I'm just trying to soak that in as much as I can too. Just like a lot of things, just trying to like be in the moment and be like, wow, this is great that I get to experience this. He had a great time. Got more candy, I think, this year than we've ever gotten before. We had to do a little stop off at the car to like clear out some things, so his pumpkin wasn't overflowing, and then it still overflowed after that. People are incredibly generous. Some of the things that people put in there, like somebody might do like a little bite-sized Snickers, but some people were giving away like full packs of like Swedish Fish and Mike and Ike's and things, and I was just like, wow, that's just so crazy. Cody and I were talking about it, like economically beforehand, and she was thinking like, well, because of inflation and people kind of getting squeezed a little bit, maybe this year won't be as fruitful for trick-or-treaters, but quite the contrary. It seemed to be, sorry, I need a drink. It seemed to be quite good for a lot of kids out there. And we hit up a bunch of houses and had a good time. I got it all on video. I have to edit all that, so that's going to take me quite a while, but we'll eventually get through it, and it'll be, I think, another little piece of my video time capsule that someday I can look back on and remember the year that Clark Man was Captain America. Hasbro and Marvel, they would be proud. So in relation to Halloween, though, I did something else that I regret. Watch Attack ended up consuming Nightmare on Elm Street, the movie. If you don't know Nightmare on Elm Street, you probably know Freddy Krueger as a character. He has a hat, burned face. He's got like a sweater on with red stripes and like a claw for his fingertips, like knives for fingers, I guess. Well, I've never watched the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Like, I know Freddy Krueger, but I don't know the source material. So I decided that, leading up to Halloween, I would watch that movie. And I did. And I have to say, Nightmare on Elm Street sucks. Such a bad movie. Maybe at the time in 1984 when it came out, like, this movie's older than I am. Maybe then it was like good. Or maybe if you were a kid, it'd be really scary. In fact, I guarantee it would be. Like, if I watched this as like someone that is Clark's age, I probably would have I would never slept again, which is kind of the premise of the movie. Essentially, what makes this so scary is that Freddy Krueger haunts you in your nightmares, and the things that he does to you in your nightmares happens to you in real life. So it's almost like the Matrix, where if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. It's sort of like that. But the fact that you can't really control when you fall asleep, and you obviously have to sleep at some point, and the fact that he's coming after you is terrifying. But where the movie really like just completely falls apart, and I'm going to spoil the heck out of this. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm sorry, but I need to talk about this. Supposedly Fred Krueger was a real person at one point, and he was a child murderer, and he murdered a bunch of kids in the area. And Nancy, who's the main character, her mom, after Freddy Krueger got off on his charges, like, he was found guilty of the murders, but because of a search warrant error, like somewhere that was signed wrong, he ended up going free. So Nancy's mom decided to become a vigilante and take the justice system into her own hands. She found him in like a boiler area or like a factory, threw gasoline all over and lit him on fire and supposedly killed him. And then decided that she was going to keep his like glove hand thing in their like old furnace area in their basement. you don't know any of this leading up to it, but as Nancy, who's going through all this, starts explaining like to her mom, like, hey, this guy, his name's Fred Krueger and he looks like this, and she ends up pulling like his hat through the dream into the real world. And the mom's response to it isn't like, oh my God, I know who that is. It's like, no, Nancy, you're fine. You just need some sleep. And this is after she has like burns and like cut marks on her arms and stuff. You just need to go back to sleep. It's like, oh my God, like, why are you treating the girl like she's crazy when like she's telling you things that she would have never had any idea about otherwise? So the mom's just completely goofy. They ultimately end up like bringing Freddy out of the dream world into the real world, where Nancy has somehow set up a Home Alone-esque style funhouse for him to go through, including a swinging sledgehammer that comes through the door and hits him in the gut, and then a light bulb that she like loads with shotgun shell like gunpowder and then explodes beside him. It's just so freaking wacky. And like anytime that he's after her, and some people he'll kill instantly in their dreams, like just by like grabbing them while they're in bed and like, you know, slicing them and dicing them. Or like the one guy, Johnny Depp, who's in the movie, pulls him like under the bed and there's blood like spraying everywhere. But for some reason with Nancy in particular, he can't do anything to her other than like chase her like a goofball. Like his arms are like moving like at his sides and he's running like an idiot and just like laughing and like saying like remarks to her, but can never seem to catch her. But in some cases he can like fly in front of her and he's like in a different position. It's just so stupid. It was so stupid. Oh my God. But there are tons of these movies. There's like 5 different Freddy movies. There is Freddy versus Jason. There's a reboot of the original movie, which I guess is pretty terrible. A part of me like just wants to kind of continue on with the series just to see just how bad it gets. Cause I heard the second movie is even worse than the first one, and they get progressively better and or worse throughout it, but none of them like are really good. It's kind of just like one of those maybe like guilty pleasure movies that you would watch and you're like, oh, that's the story of Nightmare on Elm Street. I regret putting my time into it. I regret, like, I need to get on a good show because I watched that Dahmer series too, which was awful. I need like something to bring me back around. House of Dragon is still fire. Like, we're enjoying the heck out of that. We need to finish that. It's a tough one because you need to watch that when Clark's not around because it's a little violent. But we've been watching as a family Lego Masters Australia season 2. And I have to say that is just a phenomenal show. I am loving every part of it. I think we have like 1 episode left and I'm going to be so sad when it ends. But man, it just continues to be so much better than the American one. I love the host. I think I mentioned this before. The host is Hamish and he's wonderful. In fact, there was something that won me over with him on one of the recent episodes we watched. There was this guy that was a huge Star Wars enthusiast, like loved Star Wars, and one of their challenges was to build a Star Wars ship. And he thought that he was going to win this, and he was really happy with this build. And when Brickman, the judge, who I love way more and is way more personal than the judges in the American show, when he kind of shot him down, you could tell the guy was just crushed. Like his soul was just like ruined. When they ended that show, and they were walking away, like Hamish, the host, came over and put his arm around that guy that was crushed and was like trying to like boost him up. And I just had so much respect for that. I just thought that was so cool that he could tell that guy, you know, was bummed out and he went over and did that. And it wasn't like a part of the show or anything. And I don't even know if they had audio recording at that time, but that just like meant a lot to me that he would make them feel good. And the judging in general, like they're really kind to the people. And they really like try to say some good things before they say the bad things. Like when you look at something, you're like, oh man, this thing's garbage. But like they always try to find some good in it. And they just seem way more kind. So I'm loving that show so much more than the Will Arnett United States version of Lego Masters. And I believe that the Australian people make much better builds too. I think I talked about that. Like I would say almost every single person in the Australian show could have probably won the United States one. But, you know, anytime you can get a Lego show on TV, it's fun to watch. And that's good family content. So we've been enjoying that as well. Speaking of watching things, though, outside of really bad, scary movies, I went down a YouTube rabbit hole again. This one was a very dangerous one to go down. I started thinking about my vehicle situation again. You know, I've been trying to find a new vehicle or a different vehicle or a bigger vehicle for like 2 years now. And it just hasn't worked out for me, whether it be like the lack of availability, the price markups, the markets are just not good for cars. But I started thinking again, like, I would like to find something by this spring, ideally, because that's when my car inspection comes up again. And the Subaru has now crossed the 100,000 mile threshold, where I think like more things are going to start happening, even though it's a Subaru and it's a great vehicle. At least it was up until like minor maintenance things started happening in the last 2 years or so. I definitely should have dumped it off in like 2019. That was like probably like the cutoff where I went from not ever having to do anything to it to slowly starting to have to do things. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll start watching looking at the various cars that are for sale, which I did. I was like looking at a website called Car Gurus. And then I was like, well, let me look up a review on that vehicle. Let's see what it's like. So that's where the rabbit hole began. I started looking up, various vehicles and watching reviews on it. I found a lot of great car review channels. But then I kept doing that. And every time I felt like I was getting close to like, oh, this vehicle seems like the right one, then I'd go to Reddit and see what people are saying about it, like people that have owned it or like this versus that. There's actually a subreddit for which car should I buy, and they'll give like 2 different vehicles they're considering. And then I'd be like, oh, they bring up a lot of good points. Let's go back to the drawing boards. And I did this like so many times, like get pretty close and then just falling back again. But I think I have one picked out that like the reviewers love, the people that drive them love them, and like they're good quality, kind of luxurious, but not on the super luxury scale where you're going to be paying a lot for maintenance and it's not just getting a vehicle because of whatever emblem that's on it. But to me, I think my next vehicle, and this could change at any moment, obviously, I think my next vehicle is going to be a Mazda. I'm really liking the CX-9s. It checks like all of my boxes. But then I found out, like I was on the cusp of calling a Mazda dealership to see if we could get one of these. A CX-9 is essentially like it's like a crossover. It has third row seating, which you can put down, but has a lot of storage space, which would be perfect for us. I wouldn't really use the third row. I would just use that for extra storage, but that would make traveling kind of nice. And people are raving about how nice these feel. They drive great. Mazda puts a lot of love into like how their cars drive, and it could get me to jump ship into a different Japanese manufacturer, if you still consider Mazda to be Japanese, I suppose. I was going to do a CX-9 though, and then I found out that they are on the cusp of releasing an updated version called the CX-90, and they're also making a CX-70, and there's a CX-50, and I'm like, oh god, it's the next generation. I don't want to get a car that's already outdated when I buy it. I want to wait to see what these look like, and if this is better, then I'll just be one of the first people to get a CX-90, for example. So I'm waiting to see how that turns out. But ultimately, like right now, based on everything that I've looked at, that seems to be the way to go. And I've looked at Toyotas, I've looked at Hondas, I've looked at Subarus. I've even like looked at various like BMWs, Mercedes. I've definitely ruled those out just because I don't want to get into like the ownership costs of those long term. And to lease a BMW or a Mercedes, for example, by 3 years in, I would be at the price where I could just own the Mazda that I'm looking at outright. So it seems silly to just have that for 3 years as like a rental essentially, and then to not have anything to show for it. I'd rather have something else. And I don't really care about impressing anyone. And I think that's a big reason why people get those types of luxury style cars. But a lot of people were saying the interiors of these Mazdas really give like BMW a run for their money. So I'm kind of sold on like the subreddit is loving it, Reddit in general. And then the reviews are also loving them too. So we shall see. It's like at the top of my list right now. And I guess this will be good as like a time capsule itself to kind of like look back on when I end up with something completely different. But I've rolled out like the American manufacturers for the most part. I would never get a Chrysler product. GM, nah. I would, honestly, my number one vehicle, like if I could choose anything, and this is a review that I watched, if I could choose anything, this isn't super practical, but I would really love to get one, would be one of the new Ford Broncos. I watched the review. It looks incredible. I love the styling, the spacing. It's a fairly big vehicle. Hopefully they would fit in our garage. But the problem comes down to the supply. I read that a lot of the people that ordered in like 2021 are getting theirs now, and they may not even be taking orders in 2023 just to fulfill the orders that they've had from this year. So I don't see that being a possibility for a long time, possibly getting a Bronco. But the Bronco is like an alternative to the Jeep Wrangler. And I just, as much as I love the Jeeps, they're just not super practical for my life. And again, I just don't trust the reliability in the long term with Chrysler products. So Ford I would trust. In fact, I was looking at a they actually have one near me, which I'm like tempted to go look at, a Ford Explorer ST, which is, I think it has a turbo on it and it's super fast. And I was like, ooh, that'd be kind of cool to get a fast SUV, and it's all blacked out. But the back of it, I think, has captain's chairs, which is like not a bench seat, but like two individual seats, which is great when you have two kids because they each one have their own spot. They don't want to be touching each other. But with Roxy Bear, I need a bench seat so I can throw her in there and she can get out long ways inside there and sit down however she needs to. So like trying to search for a car that has good reliability, decent gas mileage, has the space that we need, works for a kid, works for having a dog. Like all of these things kind of go all in together. Isn't like underperforms in terms of like performance and driving, and doesn't have issues later in its life. All these things like you have to weigh out. And it's so stressful trying to pick something. Usually, like I remember when we bought this Subaru, like I was at my job and we were doing business with one of the dealerships in the area, and one of the guys that we knew personally came over in the Crosstrek. It was the year they came out, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. He had the orange one, and we didn't do much research at all. It just kind of went one day when I was working Saturday morning. We're just like, okay, let's go get a car. And that was a time like it's hard to even think of this time, but they had a whole lineup of them. If you've been to a car dealership lately, there's not a lineup of anything. And we just picked the one that had like the color that we wanted, drove it. It was the only car that we test drove during the whole entire purchasing process. We drove that car. Cody liked it and we bought it. Looking back, I'm just like, wow, that was foolish. Why did we not look at more reviews? Why didn't we go out and try like 10 different vehicles, see what, like, maybe there's something better than this? But it's been a great vehicle, so we did okay. Same thing with I had a Nissan Xterra prior to that. And I remember just like one Friday I had off. And I just got on to like one of the car websites and I started looking at SUVs and I saw that one. And when Cody got off of work that day, I think she got out a little early. We drove down, I test drove it, and we bought it. You got to do a little more recon than that, I feel like. But now I'm in like the realm of doing way too much recon. So we need to tailor it back a little bit. But that was my YouTube rabbit hole. I went crazy just researching all these things and watching tons of videos and looking at Reddit while I'm listening to the video and stuff. And it didn't even result in anything other than me kind of like getting closer to like thinking that the Mazda CX-9 is the way to go. Or CX-5 is sort of like the size of the Subaru that I drive now. It wouldn't solve our problem of having more like cargo space for things because we travel quite a bit, and it'd be nice to have space, especially for like even like luggage. Like we get all of our luggage in the Subaru, and like I even have to like push the one seat forward a little bit, and if Roxy's in there, it's just a no-go. So we just need a little more space, and I think that could solve our problem. So CX-9 or CX-90 front runners right now, unless magically a Ford Bronco came up, because that would be so freaking sick. But this is a more sensible vehicle, and as where I'm at in my life right now, sensible makes sense. Lastly, here on today's episode, let's talk about a little goal update. You guys know my fitness journey is like my biggest goal right now. And I talked a little bit about that in the front of the show. But I'm doing this new thing now that I'm starting where I'm trying to get my cardiovascular health increased while also trying to gamify it. So I'm trying to see how quickly I can run 1 mile. And right now, it's not good. I can't even run an entire mile without like slowing down. So we got a long ways to go, but I want to run a mile every single time I go to the gym. And I want that time to come down every single time I leave there, whether it's by 1 second or 30 seconds, a minute, whatever I can shrink it down. I feel like if I keep doing this over and over again, every single time I go there, eventually I'll have a really respectable time. And then once I feel really good about that time, I'm going to increase it to 2 miles and then 3. And then we'll just keep going up from there to the point where I can run. I really just want to run consistently for like an hour without stopping. I want to that's like my ultimate goal. And I want to see if I can get to that. So I'm working towards that. That's going to be something I feel like it's going to take me a while, but I'm willing to put the time and effort into it because it's a goal that I would like to attain. And I just want to be in like peak physical condition. So it's my number one thing that I'm doing. My other thing that I'm doing is organizing. You guys know I've been working consistently on that. Cody and Clark were helping me this week with the table. Cody decided that she would help tear things down too of all of Clark's mocks. Our plan for the table is to eventually have a Lego city over there. So I'm really looking forward to that eventually becoming a thing and for us to do that as a family. And I've talked, I think, at length about that on various places that I've been, where it's just going to be our own builds and things that we come up with. And it's going to be like, there's going to be a sense of pride about making this thing together. It was just nice to have everybody down here. I was watching the Phillies in the World Series the other night, and we had the TV on, and I was organizing and taking care of and inventorying some sets at the Bar Architect, and then they were tearing apart sets at the table, and it was just like, oh, this is cool. We're all down here together working on this. So I'd like to do more of that in the future. I'm also selling stuff on eBay. I'm trying to clear out things that we're not using, and that's been going well. I've been making some sales. In fact, I sold the big receiver thing that usually would be sitting right there. I replaced it with a Sony one. This one was a Yamaha. I sold that yesterday, which was pretty cool. But last week I sold a projector, and this is like my only setback I've had so far. It was a projector that was ordinarily up here, but I replaced that one with a 4K one. And someone bought it, snatched it up really quickly on eBay. So it was like pretty cool. It's like $200. And I packaged it all up. They paid for shipping, and I sent it out. And then later when they got it, they told me that there were some issues with it, and I was like, oh, that's weird, because we actually tested it before I sent it because I wanted to see how many hours were on it for like the bulb, and everything looked fine to me, but the guy apparently wasn't very happy with it, and I was like, well, maybe I can help you like figure this out. But he's like, well, I'm actually like a projector salesperson, like I resell them, I buy them, sell them. And I was like, oh, if you can't figure it out, I'm sure I can't figure this out, whatever your issue is. So I was like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to return it and I'll resell it with issues? Or being that you're in this business where you're reselling these, what if we did a partial refund and then you'd sell it for parts or fix it or do whatever you want to do? And he agreed to that. So I gave him $100 back, and he seemed happy with that. I still made $100 off of it. He paid for shipping, and it's out of my space. So it was still a win, just not as good of a win as I would have liked. And I can't help but feel that maybe I was getting swindled, because he did have like a bunch of projectors for sale. And who's to say that this thing was really having any problems? Maybe he had another one that was exactly like it that he swapped or whatever. And he's like, I'll say this thing has all kinds of issues. He sent me a few photos, which I don't know, looked okay to me. But the biggest thing on eBay is your reputation and your feedback. And I don't want to get a negative or neutral feedback off of this. So it's just like, make the customer happy and then move on to the next sale, So that's what we did. And it all kind of worked out. I am going to check his account though, because if he lists that thing for like $400 or something like that tomorrow, I'm going to be very jacked. Because man, I don't know. It just seemed really sketch. Like I thought it was just a normal guy that bought it and he was like getting a projector, but no, it was this guy that sells projectors. So I'm wondering if he thought mine was underpriced and then he thought he would buy it. And then like he tried swindling me out of some more money so he can make a higher return. We shall see. I'm going to be monitoring the situation closely. I don't even want to look though, because if I got ripped off, it's going to make me angry, but what can you do? The good news is I got $100 and I got an item out of my storage room, and there's not much more of a win than that. So we're working towards these goals. Going to keep working on the fitness thing, the organization thing, still doing my Lego thing down here, making the vlogs. No 0 days is still a thing. I'm having fun with that. Videos I think are turning out really well. I'm doing live streams. My gaming channel should be coming back here in a few days after our 14-day ban is up. And the podcast channel, as you can see, it's running on pretty consistently. So everything else is pretty good in my life, I'd say. I got no complaints. But yeah, that's about it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me on this journey. And gosh, I feel like the most things I talked about was Freddy Krueger and Mazdas. I don't know how I feel about that, but you got a little taste of my life and what's going on in my brain right now. Hope you guys have a glorious weekend. If you're listening to this on Sunday when it ideally will come out, or if you're watching it or listening to it throughout the week, hope you have a great one. And I'll see you in the next Missing Pieces episode, or I'll see you in the Tuesday business meeting where we'll talk about something entirely new. Have a great one, and we'll see you then.